That's gonna be in the outtakes. Part of it. Hey guys, this is Seafood Nick from Ballistic Fighting Methods and StreetSafe101.com, and here during the Martial X Project, today we have a great martial arts instructor and practitioner, Dominick Izzo of Izzo Martial Arts and Tactical. Appreciate you coming down.
Oh, thanks for having me.
We've been spending all day here just doing some different training and trying to understand more about Wing Chun. I'm going to turn the floor over to Dominick. Dominick, tell us a little bit about your background in Wing Chun and like your lineage and that kind of thing.
Background in Wing Chun. I fell into Wing Chun in an accident in 2001, my first year I was a cop. I had a very strong wrestling background from high school and what little college I wound up going to. When I left those wrestling years, I started working in a 4 a.m. bar, and back then I kind of had bad short man's disease, so whenever some altercation would break out, I'd have to get involved in it. And being a small guy, wrestling just suited me for everything. I would get in and it would just be great. But I wanted to get a little bit more training and having fun. When you started getting in your late 20s, wrestling just didn't cut it for me anymore. So I started looking into martial arts. I looked into boxing, but there wasn't really too much availability for boxing for me. I wasn't about to drive to the city. Taekwondo was not an option. All the traditional arts for me was not an option. I had a roommate in the academy who did Hapkido, and I was very impressed with some aspects, but I couldn't find something that really fit me. So I went to a defensive tactics seminar in 2001, and I met this guy who did these tactics that were close quarter, and I was very impressed with them. And I asked him what this was, and he said it was all based off of Wing Chun Kung Fu, and I said, okay, I'm not familiar with this. And the ultimate test for me on this was it applicable towards closing the gap of an attack? And I explained to him, I said, the reason that I have not found a martial art that I liked was because I'm comfortable getting in close no matter how big somebody is. And he very humbly said to me, well, close the distance on me. And I went in for a takedown and shot, and everything he did shut me down. And what blew me away even more was that the more aggressive I was in, the more he came towards me. He never backed up on anything, and I said, this is the art I wanted in me. So I started very early 2001, and I've been doing it since this day.
Awesome. Can you give me like a 30,000 foot view of Wing Chun for those of you guys who don't know what Wing Chun is, or where it originated from, or the history of the culture of it? Can you kind of give me a snapshot?
Wing Chun is a Southern Chinese martial art. There's two schools of thought on where it originated from, and there's one that said it was created by a Buddhist nun who taught this to a girl named Yim Wing Chun. The name Wing Chun translates into either beautiful springtime or eternal springtime. And from there she taught her husband, and then so on and so forth. The other one, which kind of makes a little bit more practical sense to me, was that it was a condensing of some of the martial arts at the time, and what was just a more streamlined. They brought in concepts like economy of motion, straight lined, and they started going into just to simplify what they thought they needed at the time.
Sure.
There's talks about Wing Chun having the history of being an assassin's martial art, and there's so many branches of it, but yeah, it just originated from Southern China about 300 years ago, roughly, and its popularity, again, was not really known in the United States until Bruce Lee came over and back in, when he did. Right.
Absolutely. So how has Wing Chun evolved from 300 years ago and going from a nun or whichever lineage you're from to today?
Wing Chun's evolution is, in my opinion, is not on the upward progress. Wing Chun started as a combat martial art, get in, get dirty, get the job done. What you're experiencing a lot lately now is you're going into techniques instead of the concept of end the fight as quick as possible.
Sure.
So what, in my experience in the last several years, is what you're seeing Wing Chun going from fighting to playing, if you will.
Like drilling.
And losing the essence of what it really is. And that's the evolution of what Wing Chun is having, which is why it's having problems with answering questions about MMA. Right. You hear it all the time. Wing Chun is not an MMA, and the standard answer is, well, if Wing Chun goes into MMA, we can't do it because we're killing and maiming martial arts, and we'd have to remove 60% of what we know, and that's a great fallback excuse for why we're not in MMA. I think that, simply put, and this could get me in trouble with a lot of guys, is the fact that they don't know how to translate what it's going into. Sure. It's less of fighting, because a lot of Wing Chun guys, Wing Chun schools, they don't fight. They do a lot of playing.
So Wing Chun, why isn't it an MMA?
Why is it an MMA? Because the nature of the fact, number one, sporting context. No, if we go back and look at the root of it is, it's a killing and maiming martial art.
Yep.
It's supposed to be that way. Does it turn out to be that way all the time? Not so much. It is no rules. It is, our primary target is the throat, period. Well, based on that as an idea, it can't be an MMA. So the conundrum is, there can never be a properly done Wing Chun demo, because if you're trying to kill and maim your partners doing demo on, you can't do that.
Sure.
So if you bring in an MMA, well, you can't go for these specific strikes. So in theory, yes, it cannot fit in MMA because it's just a completely different, it's apples and oranges. I don't want to go 6 minutes or whatever it is, not 10 minutes. I want to go for 2 seconds.
Sure.
2 seconds, that's it. That's what Wing Chun's supposed to be.
So Wing Chun for the street,
Mhm.
the application for the street, I think at one point had a lot of validity, and now it's probably losing some because of that same evolution, meaning it's becoming more of a playful art, more of a drilling art, or at least that's the way it's taught.
Right.
But in its core foundation, Wing Chun for street application, for proper self-defense, was a great option. And the reason, for those of you guys who don't know, I've looked around for other Wing Chun practitioners and instructors, and there's a problem in the mindset, meaning it wasn't applicable for what we really do and what its intended use was. It became more showmanship. And that's something that in watching Dominick and talking to him literally for months before we ever ended up getting together, he had more of that, I gotta put this thing to work mindset, okay? And can you talk to me a little bit about your mindset in teaching and being a practitioner, your approach to today's day Wing Chun?
I love the two sides of it. There's one side of me that is absolutely wants to be as surgical as possible with everything that I do with the training, because I love that it's a lineage and it has background and where it came from, and my lineage is of Ip Man's lineage. I have exposure to both sides from teachers who have both of his sons, Ip Chun and Ip Ching. I want to maintain that traditionalism because there's a reverence in it. It's the way I explain to people is like, I'm Italian. That's my background.
Bang bang.
But I'm Italian. But I'm an American Italian. So I'm not Johnny Tight Shirt going, on a Friday night going out. But I love my heritage, and so there's a respect for the heritage. But I also want to see how my Wing Chun benefits me towards the application of street fighting. So in the mindset of it is, it's killing. It's as horrible as it is what circumstance is Joe Bad Guy putting me in to have to use my Wing Chun? My Wing Chun is simply going to just go from 0 to red to eliminate the threat with any means necessary based on my training, my Wing Chun, and go home.
Yeah.
But I also love the play side of it. I love the energetics. I love why we do X, Y, and Z. I love all the training aspects of it. I love the Chi-Style game. I love the drilling game. I love all that. But I know why I'm doing it, and I think that's a big hang-up for why a lot of people don't understand why they're doing it. I'm not saying teachers, I'm saying students. A lot of students don't understand why they're doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. So it's very important, I think, as instructors to be able to express that this is what you're doing and why.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a must.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you were to say that there's something that's widely misunderstood about Wing Chun, whether it's a concept, whether it's a tactic, whether it's a training method or philosophy, what would you say it is?
Is the biggest thing from my mind when it comes in is the fact that Wing Chun is a style. It's a complete system, and there's been talk about, well, Wing Chun is only close range, and Wing Chun has no application for far range, and Wing Chun has no application for ground range. It does, and that is the biggest misconception. It's a complete system if you understand it. And we all use, we talk about concepts all the time. If you understand the concepts behind what and when and why to do how, then it's a complete system and not a style. So that's off the bat is the biggest misconception about Wing Chun, is it's only a close range quarter combat. Like we had talked about earlier about the knife distance. I'm 5'7". A man who's got the same training as me, same time put under me, same lineage as me, who's 6'2", is going to have a complete different comprehension and where to put the concepts into play, and his Wing Chun is going to be different. Yeah. So it's not a style; it's a system. That's the biggest misconception.
The dummy.
Mm-hmm.
You and I talked at length about this earlier and yesterday as well. We watch a bunch of these videos on YouTube, and you see this fantastic showmanship. I mean, these guys, you can't hardly see their hands, and you can hear the banging of of the dummy. And for those of you guys who understand what the wooden dummy is, you see it's got 2 arms, it's got the 1 arm down low, and the legs that come off of it. I am of the opinion that at that pace, you're really not getting anything out of it. It's probably counterintuitive to its intended purpose. So I asked you about the dummy.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit about that, or tell our audience about what that dummy's intended use is and what you're really looking for?
The dummy's main focus is the trunk of it. Those arms are just there circumstantially wise. If you see those guys who are doing all the fast, rapid pace movements, their body's not changing position. They may move outside the dummy, but they're never moving closer towards the dummy. The goal of the dummy is to reposition yourself so that you can get your strike, your hit, your attack closer to that trunk of the dummy. Yeah. When you're moving at blinding speed, it's like you're chasing a fly in the air. If you could picture an incoming bus coming at you, you're doing all this, but how do you deal with that energy that's coming right in? So you're disconnecting this area, this distance, your forearm and your arm from the rest of your body. The dummy's teaching you by default. You get the guys who think the dummy's to harden your arms. By default, yes, you will probably gain a lack of sensitivity in your arms, so when you hit, it's going to hurt less. It is position and recovery. The main thing in Wing Chun is, where do I hit? When do I hit? Did my hit work? And then can I hit again if it didn't work? That's it. That's all the dummy's teaching us. The dummy is you'll have some people that tell you that the dummy's goal is so that you can learn to stick to the arms of the dummy.
Right.
Well, if you're sticking to the arms, why are you sticking to the arms? You are sticking to the arms because they're following back to the torso. That's what you don't hear. You don't hear is that, yes, I'm adhering to the dummy's arms because it's leading me back to where that's at. It's the biggest thing that nobody does is they don't take their time to go, I'm learning to move around an object, but why? Are you moving around an object that doesn't move, those dummy arms don't move, so that you can get in a position to strike or be in a better position to hit the core of the dummy? That's the biggest problem with the dummies. People don't know why they're hitting it.
So is that, I've watched you play on the wooden dummies via video, and then also over here, very slow, very methodic. It had a purpose. Everything had a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
The way you put your hands in, where you put them in. Is that your interpretation of how to do the dummy, or is that the way it's fundamentally taught?
Everything's going to be my interpretation, and it's got to be that way. How it was taught to me was the fact that you had to understand what you're doing. The dummy's almost an immovable object. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like in Wing Chun why we hit wall bags. You hit that object, and the energy's got to come back into you. Well, when you hit the dummy and the dummy doesn't move, how's your balance? I'm doing it slow and methodically because I want to feel this is as far as my arm is allowed to go because this dummy has an immovable arm here. Oh, that means I have to shift my weight this way a little bit. Right. It's giving me, the faster I go, I'm not going to find those little nuances and go, no, look at the muscle eases up here. I feel good there. It's teaching me more about me, and you can only do that through going slow.
That's always been true, at least in my opinion.
Slow makes you fast.
It's slower, slow and smooth fast, that kind of thing, right? So, Chi Sao, the drill Chi Sao. People look at Chi Sao, or you expect to go into Wing Chun school, and you expect a bunch of little Chinamen doing, rolling hands,
Yeah.
And some of them do a fantastic job of doing it. Some of the practitioners and whatnot, and they have great sensitivity and they're playful with it and that kind of deal. But you ask them why, why are you doing what you're doing? I don't know. Well, my master told me. To me, that's something that's misunderstood. Mm-hmm. And give me your take on the whole idea of Chi Sao.
Love it. Love Chi Sao. It's fantastic. It's a game. It's a chess game. It's a way to see whether or not your skill is actually BS. Mm-hmm. But that's just it. It's a game. And the problem is exactly what you're saying is you're going into expecting to a Wing Chun school to Chi Sao. That is a massive decline of why it's a problem as the evolution was going down. If it wasn't for YouTube, people wouldn't know what Chi Sao was. But now everyone's putting their demos up, sometimes myself included guilty, as we're linking hands, we're rolling, and you're seeing these blind hands going all over the place. What's the point of that for? Chi Sao is for a few different things, and it is the reason why we don't have a belt system, so to speak, in Wing Chun. You're grading 4 different things, and the first thing is going to be technique. Technique is monkey see, monkey do.
Sure.
Chi Sao teaches you where to apply your technique. If you learn what a Tan Da is or a Gan Da is, say, where do you put that? Well, I don't know, because you have to feel where your opponent's going to tell you to do it, which comes into sensitivity and reflex. Those are kind of like the upper echelon of what we're trying to achieve in Wing Chun. We want the best sensitivity, the best reflexes, stay relaxed, X, Y, and Z, do all this stuff. Energy. Chi Sao allows you to hit at a very fast pace at someone's chest, unpadded, in a controlled environment where we're going, hey, we're training today, I'm blasting you. If I get in, I get in, which means that your center line wasn't protected. Okay, well, we got that. I know that I got stuff to work on. And then there's position. Are you in the right place to hit the right hit at the right time? It's as simple as that. The problem is, with Chi Sao, as much as we say don't chase the hands, that's what we all do in Chun. We chase the hands, because that's where we start. It's like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Again, I have no experience with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but from what I see online, they start on the ground. Well, where's the transition from point A to point B? Wing Chun works best. Going back to it's a complete system, it's not a style. It does work, no distance is gapped. To distance, it's finally gapped. It works best when that distance is closed. When you start in the Chi Sao pace, you're eliminating the distance and you're robbing yourself of how did you get from point A to point B.
Sure.
So that's Chi Sao. Chi Sao is a fantastic tool. It's one of many for Wing Chun, but it's not Wing Chun. It's just a tool.
So it's kind of misrepresented.
Absolutely, it is. It's people are seeing it as Wing Chun. It's Chi Sao. So that means you can only start at this point, and that's where it has. And it's not, unfortunately.
Yeah. So the other thing that I was noticing, even before I got together with you, one of the things that I misunderstood about Wing Chun for myself was that I always thought that it had a lacking of footwork. And does it have like Basha type footwork? No. Does it have Muay Thai or Savat style footwork? Well, I don't think anybody's got Savat style footwork. But in spending some time with you, I realized that it's not necessarily a lacking of footwork. You're allowing your opponent to bridge the gap, and you are shifting. So what you're doing is making small angle changes and not expending too much energy bouncing around on the balls of your feet and trying to angle. You're just going to say, let them pick the angle, let them come on in. They will close the distance for me. I will change my alignment relative to my opponent to get a strategic advantage. And can you just explain for our viewer that whole concept, meaning it's not lacking footwork, and tell us what shifting is and how you're making small adjustments.
It absolutely is not lacking footwork. It's lacking teaching and understanding footwork. You're absolutely right on that. Going back to the fact of had my wrestling background, 99.9% of all fights end up on the ground. They do. And I was told off the bat, and I read in several articles, well, Wing Chun, based on that grappling initial distance, is the answer to staying on your feet. You're right, it is, if you understand that. Wing Chun does not move, and that's the biggest thing. When we talked about before, there's a proximity. If I'm 5 feet away from somebody with my longest tool, a kick, I can't get to you, I'm not bridging the gap. It's too dangerous for me. It gives you too much response time to where if I'm going to initiate that contact, you are at an advantage. We have a saying called he who moves first dies first. The footwork is, you're put into the footwork. There's times when you move on your own, and there's times when you're forced on your own. The footwork is simply staying rooted, and you do move, but you have to understand the relationship from where the point of contact is being made. If my palm is on you, how am I feeling? This is where sensitivity comes into play to a degree. How am I feeling the pressure I'm feeling here? How does that affect my footwork? It's like dancing. If you're waltzing with your partner and a male is leading, how does the female know when to lead? She feels the hand around her waist, the hand around her arm, and his gentle pressure, which is brought by his arm, is leading her forward, leading her back, dipping. It's almost the same idea. The problem is Wing Chun guys lose that confidence and that patience game. And it's a patience game. And it, again, too, is developed by a smaller person, supposedly. Well, there's no way in hell I'm engaging with a larger person and going in. I'm going to mass on mass, skilled mass will always win.
Sure.
So I'm not about to risk, an initiating attack unless I'm within that distance where I'm comfortable. So if we're talking a foot, then we'll initiate the distance. But Wing Chun's footwork is to stay on the balls of the feet, stay on the heels of the feet off of the balls to a degree. When you're shifting is simply changing your axis and your angle. You do come off your heel if you're planted. Based on how you're putting your hips into play, you're it's almost physically impossible to not raise your heel.
Right.
But it's having the mindset to where you take these concepts and you apply them towards what's needed, and not going, well, we had it men that said your heels must stay on the ground the entire time, and you have to have a 70 distribution weight to your back leg and a 30 up front. You have to be able to move. You know, it's got to be, you stand 50-50 natural in life, and it takes 1% of your transference of weight to move forward
Sure.
or backwards, that's it. So the footwork is there, but it's slight and minute. We don't want to take big spaces unless we need to. The only time we really take big spaces is if we're pursuing. If somebody breaks contact with us, then we wind up really trying to cover the ground.
Yeah.
You have longer strides than I do. If you make contact with me and back up, I have got to take a massive amount of aggressive forward just to keep you, from getting away from me.
Sure, keep that engagement range and keep that cohesion. Wrongfully so, I think JKD guys think that we know each other. Very much so, because we understand how to pox out and lops out and that kind of thing. And the two are constantly related or compared to each other. And I've always tried to express to our students and stuff, we have elements of Wing Chun. We do not do it the same way or for the same use. Not better or worse, just saying that it's just different. And much of Wing Chun actually was taken back out of JKD for whatever reason. I'm not going to get too far and speculate as far as that goes. I'm a JKD guy, you're a Wing Chun guy. We get a chance to spend some time and share some information and that kind of thing. It's important for us, for me for sure, to spend some time with a guy like you and say, okay, well, into the 26 artists that are involved in JKD, Wing Chun's one of them. And I want to see how you influenced us, right? So in your opinion, just being a martial artist and having at least delved into a little bit of JKD and trying to understand it, how do you feel that Wing Chun plays into the JKD program, or why it came in, or why it was taken out, or whatever? What's your...
From what it seems like, I mean, if that's what Bruce Lee learned at the time, if he had 3 years exposure to Wing Chun, that's going to be his, I won't say base, because he could have done Taekwondo. And based on his mindset, his perception, he could have done, this would have been his punch.
Yeah.
Okay? Elements, absolutely. If a punch literally means taking your hand from point A to point B, then there are elements of Wing Chun and boxing.
Yes.
So as far as that goes, an open hand slapping, we're going to call that a paksao. So he brought Cantonese over into the dialogue of what he termed this was.
Which might have been a parry from boxing.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So it's the same thing. If you look at boxing from, the 20s and 30s, here's the stance, right?
John O'Sullivan.
Wing Chun. Who influenced who? How do we know that Wing Chun wasn't influenced by Western boxing?
Right.
We don't know this. So I think that the elements are just the terminology. I think that it was what he learned at the time and then brought it in. I don't think that Wing Chun has a heavily influence on JKD because there's so many things that are different. I think JKD stands on its own. So when you do have the fact that, when we talk about this, some people are saying, well, JKD is only X, Y, and Z. I have zero experience with JKD, but from what I read, no, it was pick up a brick and use it on somebody's head if that's what your expression says at the time.
That's right.
So that by default means that if he was exposed for 3 years, and from what I read, again, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, Wing Chun was the only art that he was formally trained in for a while.
For a while.
So that means that his expression, that all he knows during, let's just say, point year 1 to year 5 is Wing Chun. But then when he has more exposure to other arts, now he's going to start knowing more.
Right.
So I think the reason it was eliminated was because he started to educate himself more. If all I ever have is a high school education, or I get to 10th grade and drop out, I'm going to learn Math 101. Well, Math 102 is going to teach me about fractions and then so on. So I'm going to go, I can balance my checkbook, that's it.
Right.
I'll never be an astrophysicist or a rocket scientist because I didn't progress my education. So I think exactly for him that he was, take away the word martial, he was just an artist.
Right.
And I think that's, we all boil this down to it. He was an expression, it was his expression, and he was influenced to what he saw at the time. So I think he just no longer needed it. I mean, if you do Wing Chun for 20 years and you're always doing the first form, or you're doing the wooden dummy, maybe there's a point in time during your career where you don't do the wooden dummy for 6 months. So does that mean you eliminated it? Yeah, for that 6 months.
Yeah.
Maybe you pick it up again.
Sure.
Maybe if he was still alive, there'd be a time where he revisited Wing Chun, or maybe he revisited boxing. So I think it was eliminated because he wasn't focused on it. It wasn't necessary.
Sure.
He got what he got out of it. That's it.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Well, JKD is very notorious for picking elements from different places. And I'm of the mindset that all combat is the same. The fundamentals will always come back down the same. And I look at martial arts as just mode of delivery, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a punch in Wing Chun versus a punch in Taekwondo versus a punch in boxing, my hand is still making contact with that guy's face.
Yes.
That's all that really counts, right? So all the fundamentals are always the same. It's just how you are able to employ your tactic and that kind of thing. So that being said, like JKD, we do have like the straight blast.
Mm-hmm.
We do use a particular type of trapping, which, as you and I discussed earlier, is more clearing, not necessarily trapping.
Right.
So we do have these type of elements. We could have, again, like you said, could have come from anywhere. Just it could have been a different name. You know, I could have said rear hand parry. You could have said pak sao. Hey, the same thing.
Yep.
Same thing, right? So, so that's wise of you to kind of look at it and say, okay, well, what was going on in that time frame of JKD evolution? You know, and what was going on with Wing Chun evolution, or whatever it is. So what I'm going to ask you to do is we're going to reset up the camera. And I'm gonna ask Dominick to just beat the shit out of me for a little bit, and just kind of give us a little bit of demonstration as far as you know, anything that he wants to show us in the Wing Chun, something that might be misunderstood, something that's just common, just some element that you typically don't see. So give us a couple minutes. We'll be right back. All right, guys. So we're standing up here. We've kind of readjusted. Dominick's gonna be demonstrating some different things about his mindset in Wing Chun and training Wing Chun. I think we're going to get into a little bit of Chisao, is that right?
Sure,
or whatever you like. So I'll let you take the board, and I'm going to be the dummy.
Great. One of the first things that we have to understand is that the fact that Wing Chun, like everything else, is going to be based on the interpretation of the person who's doing it. And I stopped saying, well, Wing Chun deals with X, Y, and Z like this. My Wing Chun does. I'm 5'7". I have a very large man in front of me. So what we were talking about earlier is Wing Chun is a system, not a style. What Wing Chun doesn't do is we don't unnecessarily bridge the gap. What I mean by that is if we have distance between Nick and I, and he wants to get in a fight with me, calls my mother dirty words, and my sisters, pays stuff for money, I'm not going to get involved unless I have to. I'll just say, yes, you're right, she is, which requires ego, and just go, I'm fine, and leave. If I leave, I don't get hit, I keep my teeth, I win the fight. I think every art covers that off the bat, and we talk about that. Unnecessarily bridging the gap is going to lead to a lot of trouble. If I'm ready to sit there and attack a Nick, what's my option? I can either come with both hands or a hand, and he's got a response. As simple as that. I come in, I'm already a beat behind the movement. It's what Wing Chun will not do. Well, Wing Chun we initiate, but if there's a distance where I'm closer to him, I know I got to fight, then it's a different story. Completely different story because I'm within my range, so to speak, on that. So there's the first misconception about Wing Chun is we do initiate that distance, but only when needed. And honestly, unless you feel that you're comfortable on it, don't initiate because he who moves first is going to die first. That being said, we talk about the blocks of Wing Chun. If movement is initiated, we're going to look at a punch per se. It's going to be one of the same things. We train for a straight punch off the bat because it's going to be the hardest thing to deal with. If my job as Wing Chun is to deal with my punch, and Wing Chun, again, what I said before, is not the punch, is not Chisao. Wing Chun is the punch, period. It's from point A and point B. We train it over and over and over again. My Sifu, Syed Ahmad, says flat out, if you don't understand where the power of the punch is coming from, you don't know Wing Chun. It's as simple as that. But we concentrate on these blocks in Wing Chun. And what Wing Chun has turned out to be lately is, I feed a punch come in, if you punch me left so they can see, it is 1, 2, 3. 3 movements to get to my target. So Wing Chun, you'll see again, go, 10 movements or however many we need to do. Wing Chun has got to be simply, Nick punches, punch, fire a punch. We have a few tools in Wing Chun. We have what's called a Tan Sao. We have Gan Sao, Bong Sao, and we have Wu Sao, we have Pak Sao. We have all these wonderful tools. And you'll see people try to initiate them to bridge that gap. The most famous one's going to be our Bong Sao. It's this, and I did a video on it, you'll see it, people pose in Bong Sao. And if Nick punches me left and I Bong Sao, I bridge the gap. The problem is I'm defensive now. Okay, I need to be offensive. All of our tools in Wing Chun are forced into. I'm not going to bridge the gap with something that's defensive, because if he punches in, go ahead and punch it hard, it's not going to happen. I'm losing distance, and if I'm not fast enough, I'm going to wind up getting hit in the face. So my first goal in Wing Chun is understand that I need to punch. A very simple understanding for this is going to be is going to be trying to block. And this is where Wing Chun fails. So Nick and I are standing at an even pace. I can't hit him, he can't hit me. I'm going to count 5 times. And every time Nick's going to get a shot, no matter where. We're training right now, so he can hit curve punches, high, low, whatever. I'm going to try and block everyone with my tools. With my jump sao, my gan sao, my bong sao, my pak sao. I'm going to try and block every one of these. And we're going to see if I can hit any of these. And this is completely non-rehearsed. 1. Nope. 2. 3. 4. 5. I would say that he made contact on every single one of those. I'm also dealing with a man who's got a longer reach. So bridging the gap is going to be essential, but I want to bridge the gap with this, not with this. So we're going to do that same drill again. I'm going to try and block all of his shots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I changed the mentality. My first thing has got to be attack. Obviously, we're at the distance where I'm not going to make any attacks, but if I fire a punch at the same time he attacks, go. Now all of a sudden with footwork closing that distance, as long as I'm making contact, that's going to tell me what to do. My first thing in Wing Chun is always to fire a punch. That's why we have our hands up. We have a man sao, wu sao, an asking hand, answering hand. You can punch anywhere you want. I'm going to step in and punch. We're going to hold a position. This is where all my tools come into play now. Based off of what he's telling me to do and where my position is, now these are where my tools come into play. Tan sao, lop sao, pak sao. You cannot do any of the Wing Chun techniques that we all like to do unless contact is made. It's as simple as that. And then how are the techniques applied? Every energy has to have forwarding energy going again. If Nick punches me right, left hand, and I punch out of the side, you can see his balance is not affected, and this is a timing issue. Nick punches again, my pak sao has got to be going in, so that if it leaves that, it redirects right up to his face. Another thing you can't see, but I can feel is, this is telling me how my footwork is being adapted now. Based on the question that he asked before about how Wing Chun's footwork is, he's got energy, it's coming towards me. This energy is being received by my hand, into my arm, down to my arms, and it's telling me to root. If I didn't, and he comes in with harder energy, going backwards. If he gives me no energy, well, then I continue my strike in. But your partner is dancing with you, and he's telling you where to move. This is the understanding of how far you need to be in Wing Chun. This is why you need to know that this, for me, is my perfect distance. If he punches, and I'm all the way out here, now I'm giving him a nice iron bar. All he has to do is push. I'm screwed. So I have to learn, where's your distance? How close am I? How far away am I? Wooden dummy applications. So the first thing we have to do in Wing Chun is we have to absolutely accept the fact of I'm punching. Everything else is going to be intercepted, and then you transition from there. I punch, interception, great. Now I have to go to my next movement. Next movement. Next movement. Next movement. Next movement. Next movement. Well, here's all my tools. My gan sao, my yun sao, my pak sao, my gum sao. They're all told on what he does to me. He punches again. I'm going to punch bong sao, tan sao, tan sao. All my movements are based on what he tells me. Consider the fact that I'm going forward. Every one of these movements, if you watch, I'm going to do this again, punch. If I stay static, hey, I'm just throwing arms and techniques up there. It's always got to be accompanied with forwarding movements, especially for somebody as small as me. I punch, flowing in, changing, flowing in. I have to constantly move. It's my dance and my footwork. Repositioning to flow in. That's what Wing Chun is. Am I putting in a tan sao with a movement? Am I repositioning to come in with a movement? That's where Wing Chun is supposed to be designed for a smaller person to overcome a larger person on that aspect of that. What other questions we have?
That one into Chi Sao.
Chi Sao. Chi Sao is misunderstood. Chi Sao, again, we're going on 4 different things. We're going on technique, position, energy, and then reflex, which is sensitivity. So my tan sao technique. If we go back to Nick and I facing each other, and I say, would you please feed me a left-hand punch? Tan sao. But we know this is not applicable in a fight, because who's going to do this? So Chi Sao teaches us to, I'll back up for a second. We do know that there's a difference between application and training. Training, perfection. Application, if Nick winds up punching, maybe that this is my tan sao. Well, that completely negates what we learned in the form of Wing Chun. You can't be a slave to the movements. You have to make the movements work for you based on the concepts and guidelines. Chi Sao, the reason why we start linking up is twofold. Number one, this is, in our view, it's too dangerous of a place. We're coming to a mutual agreement. I'm saying, okay, let's get some training done. I'm going to link up because eventually we're going to get here, which is also the fault of a lot of Wing Chun schools, is the fact that they don't know how to deal with this space. It's, oh God, what are we going to do here? So when somebody gets up and they get in a stance, they're chasing those hands because they want to bridge there. So number one, it's a gentleman's agreement. We're linking up. How are you? It's good to see you. Let's start rolling. The other thing it's doing is, from my wrestling background, it was this, holding on. And you're really tightening on, you're concentrating on these arms. We're learning how to keep things free. Okay, I'm learning that with my arms on here, that when in doubt, move. I always want to sit there and rotate and move and get some fluid motion so that if I ever want to be static and I don't know what to do, we'll start moving again. I have to be in constant movement and flux. Forwarding energy. You'll see a lot of Chi Sao done on YouTube that there's energetics. And energetics are great to a degree. But they have to be focused on that center line. If you don't, you hear the analogy of a log in water. If I push on this side of Nick, he can take it. Push on this side of Nick, he can take it. Give slight pressure back, he's got to force back before he winds up taking it. You push a log underwater by going in the center. So you do see people, I think, taking it to the next step of, and complicating it, where they will be rolling hands. I'm going to come up in our bong sound, foot sound, and you roll. And they will be doing big changing movements. But they're, in their mind, their changing movements are to come out wide to come back to center. It's great. We're getting to a point, but I think that's taking it far beyond the spectrum of what it is. I think that Chi Sao has got to be laser beamed on center. And your center's got to be tight. This goes back to the reason why that I'm not worried about dealing with a hook punch per se. So we deal with a straight punch off the bat, is because if I could deal with any energy coming in forward, if that energy is coming cocked, I'm not going to worry about that. I'll have protection. This is, yeah, see, if I guard here, well, I still may target there. My next movement is going to be based off my contact with him. So your punch, you have to know where the power is. Going back to Chi Sao 2, we're looking at, the hardest thing is going to be position. Right? If my technique is, you know, I'm going to lop, chop, well, there's Tan Sao, right there. There's Tan Sao again. There's my jump Sao, Tan Sao. These are, Tan, Yun, strike, palm strike with my Wu Sao back here. Yun, strike. So we're jockeying for position where to get in there. So these are where my techniques come out into play. These are where they're teaching you how to do it. The best thing about Chi Sao is the more you wind up doing it, your tools will just appear out of nowhere. Going back to this, the position. Well, I have to learn that if I get a forwarding pressure coming in, I need to learn how to move. This and this have to speak to each other. This is the dance right now. And a lot of Chi Sao is just out of rolling. Nick steps in, I have to learn how to step back. Nick steps back, I have to learn how to stay with him within that structure. I can't afford Nick moving back and me playing catch up. Nick moving in and I change the angle, but I'm too late. It's got to be, that's where the sensitivity is fantastic. He moves, and I have to move. Moves, I have to move. I have to stay. This is where we stay stuck to the hands. Now, Wing Chun, we welcome what comes, we escort what leaves, and we thrust forward when the space is free. Well, if he punches in with a hand, I welcome what comes. I escort what leaves. When he leaves, when he pulls his back, I escort what leaves. When he goes to give me a hook punch, I thrust forward when the space is free. That's all we're doing. We are not chasing the hands, because then that goes back into fight. I'm going to do this. So you wind up having energy sinks. Energy in Wing Chun, you can be very relaxed and light. And you see a lot of this on, on YouTube. Okay, this is great. What are we doing? How is this applicable to a fight? Well, if you train this way, it's not. You'll get an adrenaline dump. You'll tense up. As much as you want to be reflexive, yes. When Chi Sao applies to, Nick throws a punch, my Chi Sao comes in here right away. Nick continues to move because he's bigger and stronger. I have got to find that movement in chaos. And this is where my Chi Sao lives. It's got to be in that chaos. It's got to be all over the place. I've got to feel that he's linked up, pushing me down. I've got to disengage and come back up to strike again. He's moving me this way. I've got to move again. He's pushing me. I've got to follow a different direction. That's what Chi Sao is teaching us. Without that positioning, without that feeling of incoming energy, hard energy, all you're left with is technique. And if Nick punches, punch again, punch again. This is great. Hey, Black Belt Magazine's calling me tomorrow to do a photo shoot. It's fantastic. Has no applicability. So we have position, right place, right time. In Chi Sao, did you hit, am I shifted way too much on my bong Sao? Did I miss my target? Well, how do I have to go from point A to point B. Am I so focused on these wrists that I didn't let go and find a different hole? It's not about control. I'm going to control Nick. There's no way in heck I'm going to control a man who's almost double my size, taller than me, has a longer reach. Sure, I'll control these things while the rest of his body's running over me. My job is to feel that energy coming in, feel my stance and my structure, and when he does come in, it's, okay, here's a hole in the Swiss cheese. Here's one. Here's one. Am I using my proper footwork to prevent from going on the ground? If 99% of all footwork or fights go on the ground, how does a smaller man like me stay on my feet? That's where Chi Sao starts to. It's a dance, but it has to have application towards fighting, and it's not fighting. It is just a game.
Be like water.
Be like water. Love that. The non-philosophical aspect of be like water is simply, what does water do? Okay, water. Water is energy from your body. Okay, meaning that my intent. I tell all my students that I'm a 50 caliber machine gun that's mounted on a tripod. So from my stance, I have my tripod here. I'm drawing energy up from the earth, and it's feeding up my spine. That's the belt feed. The cannons, the barrels that are firing out of are 1, 2, 3, 4, and if need be 5 and 6. Those have to get to a target. So if water's coming in and it's punching, or it's coming down, and then water hits an obstruction, following it back, because water, your intent is water, not your hands. So the hardest thing that people in Wing Chun have to do is they focus on the hands and not the intent, where the focus is going. That's why I am beeline sightful. If I'm pushed this way, my sight is going right in on his chest. My water's flowing. The water's going to meet another resistance. Flowing again. Water's flowing. I'm going to flow again. I'm going to try and find that flow from the water. Always going in. Okay? The problem is meeting the sharpness with the fluidity. And there's other schools out there. You'll see a lot of people doing this where they roll. Okay, can you translate? Yeah, I got in there. What the heck is this going to do? Or this going to do? Oh, look, I can hear this. You got the concept, but can you apply that to here? Repositioning, here, here, here. Can you reposition that only when you need to move? If I hit here, I need to shift, right? Wing Chun says I need to shift back. Here, maybe I need to move this much to fire another punch coming in there. Do you understand how that on-off switch works? On, off. Here again. On, off to transition. On, off to transition. On, off to transition. Can you get the on and off transition? I think a lot of people don't understand that on there. So the be like water concept was me going my energy, which is the punch, a strike, anything from point A to point B, and then what do I do when I meet that obstruction? That's where Chi Sao has that. So you're taking all these components, forms, footwork, wooden dummy, air drills, and then you're putting it in the bigger picture, which is fighting. It's as simple as that. And again, too, we overcomplicate everything in Wing Chun. Wing Chun is simply going from non-fighting to punching. Did you hit? Did your hit the target? Did it do what it was supposed to do? If not, is your position ready to fire another hit? Repeat if necessary. That's all Wing Chun is.
Awesome. So if you guys are watching these demonstrations, it's fair to say that even when I first started studying just a background in Wing Chun, I thought it was this trapping art, right? Remove the barrier or try and get these type of hand traps, that kind of deal. And you've kind of opened my eyes to know where we punch first. You know what I mean? We're all constantly being thrown in the face. The rest of it kind of falls in place behind it.
Mm-hmm.
That's in support of me getting to my target, which I think is widely misunderstood. You know, I think everybody's looking at, oh, I'm gonna pak saw this and lap saw that and jet saw this and jiao saw that, and it's really not it. It's I'm gonna make it as simple as possible, here to there, and
yes,
that's it. Drive it. You know, yeah. So I really appreciate that. Dominick, if somebody wants to come out and train with you, how do they get a hold of you? Where can they find you? That kind of thing.
I'm on Facebook. You can go on Facebook and like Izzo Tactical Combat Martial Arts. My website is izzo-training.com, izzo-training.com. I offer free classes in the northwest suburbs. If you also want this lineage, my teacher is Syed Ahmad, and you can like Eternal Spring Martial Art on Facebook. He's in Chicago River North neighborhood. We're the same lineage, and that's it. You get a hold of us. We're more than happy to have you come by for a class and check it out. Make sure it's for you.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, that's it with Dominick Izzo, Izzo Wing Chun Tactical. We've had a great time just kind of training with him and learning different stuff. It's been a great journey, and Dominick, again, I really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully we'll catch you guys in the next one.